Hey, what's up guys, Andrew here, and in this video I'll show you how to separate tracks in OBS to prevent Twitch and YouTube copyright strikes. If you like any information that I'm going to provide in this video, please like and subscribe. That does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. The first thing I want to mention is definitely consider installing Voicemeeter Banana. Once you install Voicemeeter Banana, by going to the website, you go to the Banana tab, you install. And I'm quickly going to go over this because I have videos on this already, which I'll link. So you download Voicemeeter Banana, and you go to the virtual audio cable, and you download virtual cable, the free one. You also download virtual cable A and B, which is $5. So if you have $5 to spare, I definitely say pick up VB cable A and B. You install every piece, and after every piece you reboot. What do I mean by that? When you install Voicemeeter Banana, then you reboot. You install the virtual cable free, then you reboot. Then you install VB cable A, B, and B, and then you reboot. Once you've installed everything, then from there it's really dealing with the application. So you go to Voice to look for it. I would definitely say pin it to a taskbar. Another thing that you can do is you can also open the file location. Once you open the file location, go to Properties, Compatibility tab. I would definitely say consider running it in administrator mode. Definitely consider doing something like that. Pin it to the taskbar. Once you pin it to the taskbar, you're able to start the application. After starting the application, from there, there's a couple of things that you want to look for. You want to go to sound control panel, and then from there you want to mirror to some degree what this looks like here. So your playback tab, make sure this one is your default communication device. Make sure this one is your default device. And the recording tab, you want to make sure that this is your default device. And this is, let me go up here, and this is your default communications device. All right. So once you set that, another thing that you could do for audio routing, I know some individuals use external applications for audio routing. Windows 10 has that built in. So from there, you go to Advanced Sound Options, and you could route specifically where you want something to go. So right now I have my YouTube, which is my main music setup here, going to Voicemeeter aux, and I'll show you what that looks like here, which is this section here. So you have your inputs and you have your outputs, and I'm flying through this because I have videos on this, as I mentioned earlier. One of the most important things that you want to make sure that you do is select your best device for A1, which is your hardware out. For me, A1 is my Astro A40 because it is a device that's not going to run out of battery. So I have that as my setup here for that. And it's also the same section where you can run ASIO. ASIO only runs on A1. So I have my A40 for A1, and for A2, I have my A50. And then from there, you select... let's go over here for a second. For here, you select, I put cable A here, okay? And then I put the free cable here. So cable A and B is the one that you paid for, so I'm using cable A here. The free one, I put that here for my voice over IP applications, which is your Skype, Discord, and all that stuff here. And then here, since I'm running RTX Voice, which I have a video for as well, I'm using RTX Voice to filter out my stuff. So it sounds, really, really good when I'm recording locally. And if you decide to run different VST hosts, I have videos for that as well, which you're able to do the patching with the VST host over here, right? So then from there, you pick cable A here, cable free here, and then your mic goes here. So you select this section here, you pick your mic. Make sure when you pick in your drivers, they're all the same. WDM is the best driver after ASIO. ASIO is the best latency. WDM is second to that. So most individuals will have WDM. So definitely pick WDM across all these devices. So WDM for your mic, WDM for the cable, WDM for cable A, and that should set up that. So where do you go from here? Well, from here, you need to select which output, how you want to hear it. Do you want to hear yourself? Do you want to hear yourself on your device? So for me, A1 would be A40. A2 would be A50. So I would select either one of these if I wanted to hear myself, depending on what I was wearing as a headset that day. So since I don't want to hear myself, these are both not selected. Okay. So for the voice over IP, I usually use A40. So A40 is selected, which is A1. And sometimes I use A50, that's selected here as well, A1, A2. For this section here, which is usually running local music applications, so that's A1 or A2 if I want to hear it. This is the game section here. This is where all my game music comes through. So if I want to hear that on an A40 or A50, I select that. Here is where my web browser music comes through. So anything running on the web browser, it comes through here, which is how I have it routed over here in this section here. So I click here and I dropped down to select this section here. So all my music comes through here, A1 and A2 selected here. Also with Voicemeeter Banana, you can do EQ by right clicking here. You can set your EQ if you decide to do that. Again, this is a quick overview. You can actually record podcasts with this as well, and I have a playlist of all this stuff. Select which input that you want to select to record podcasts, which I have a video on as well. And so that's it. So pretty much the app is kind of set up, right? All your stuff is selected. The other thing that you want to make sure as well is after you select everything here, everything is nice and awesomely selected. You want to make sure you save those settings and you just pick a section where you want to save those settings. You do that as well. In the event that this decides to wipe, all you have to do is just go to menu and then load wherever you save the settings. When they were perfectly working, it's like a restore for yourself. Okay. So now that that's set up, so what happens there? So from there, then you can route the sections that you have. Let's just go back here. So you can route these inputs inside of OBS, right? So we're going to bring OBS up here. Okay. Let me just select a couple of things on this side before I bring it over. Okay. So now this is OBS. So here's what I did here. So if you're concerned about playing music on your stream that is copyrighted, one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing, especially if you have something like a mixer installed, you can mute that particular channel coming in so it doesn't play on stream. For instance, if somebody is speaking to you and they want to say something, but you're on stream, one of the things that you can do is you can mute the channel that they're coming in from. So this is my Discord channel here. So you can mute where they're coming in from so they can share that information to you in your ears and it will not hit the actual stream. So I could just mute this quickly and they can share whatever they want to share, and then I'll mute it back, or unmute it so they can, resume back to the shenanigans or whatever that is, right? So the music section is here. And this is where I play royalty-free music, or if I decide to play copyrighted music. So I just want to mention this thing here. So if you decide to play copyrighted music on your stream, and it's a stream that you believe can have awesome content, which is pretty much every stream, you want to consider playing royalty-free music. That's the easiest way to avoid any copyright strikes or DMCAs or anything like that. Or if you're playing the music and you mute it and you just use the game music for that particular stream, you'll never have to worry about music that you do not want, especially if you clip something awesome and you had a copyright song playing. Now you have to figure out how you're going to delete that stuff, right? So the best way to avoid that is to mute that channel while you're streaming. So one way to completely do this, so before I get into that, let me just address this particular issue. So how do you get these things to line up the way they are, right? So if you remember when I showed you these inputs, right? You have RTX voice, cable A, right? All those things, they're reflective here, all right? So for the apps, let's go to properties. For the apps, I have the cable A set up for that, right? Which is what we see here. So if I decide to play a VLC local content, it will play through here because I routed it through the actual app section here. So how do you do that? So I do plus and I do audio input capture, right? And I already have some set up. And then once I do that, then I select where I want it to go. So if you look on this side here, I have input as a mic, input as a voice over IP. You could look at it by the symbol. You have an input as apps, and then have output as game, right? So that is a audio output capture, okay? And then I have, let's just show you an example here. So my mic, if we right click on my mic and we go to properties, it is the RTX voice, right? So if you go to music and you go to properties, it is the voiceover aux output, Voicemeeter aux input, right? And that's selected for that. If you go to, let's go to here, properties, this is the cable output, which is the free cable. That's how we'll have that selected there. So now you have all these channels separate. This is how I have it set up when I'm streaming. So the other thing I want to make sure I mention as well is when you're streaming, the only thing that is really being recorded in your stream is track 1. Okay, so for streaming, track 1 is the only thing that is being recorded, right? So another way that you can actually make sure that the music section, section is not recorded is to right click in this section here, go to advanced audio properties, and then you want to uncheck track 1 while you're streaming, right? So the only thing that would be in there would be the game. Let's say you have applications coming in, right? Of course, voice over IP if you have friends speaking with you, and of course your mic will be selected. So when you're streaming, the only thing that gets recorded is track 1. That is the only thing that gets recorded. So you can uncheck the music, and that will make sure that that particular thing does not hit the stream at all, right? The other thing, as we mentioned before, is to just mute it. So you know for sure that that particular content is not going to hit the stream. You could do the same thing for the voice over IP conversations. Of course, the game music, you want that to be in there. Your mic, you definitely want your mic to be in there. And of course, apps, if you run that like a just chatting or whatever, you decide if you want to keep that muted or unmuted. So that's for streaming, right? So I'm just going to recap that real quick. So track 1 is the only thing that gets recorded when you're streaming, right? So you want to make sure that the music track is this part here, this 1, you want to uncheck that box, okay? You want to uncheck that box. So let me just go back to settings for a second, and let's go to, where were we? That's audio, that's general. Okay, here. So yeah, so track 1 for streaming is the only thing that gets recorded. Now, if you want to do local recording, and you want to have those tracks separated, let's say you're recording something locally like a podcast or an actual recording of a gameplay that we are trying to set up to do a video for, you can actually do the recordings as well for that. So this is how you do the setup for multi-track local recording, okay? So here's what I have here. So for that, you would check all these boxes here, track 1 through 6, make sure it's on MP4. Okay, so select track 1 through 6, make sure it's on MP4. All right, so I have a constant bit rate at 6,000 here for that, right? And then what happens is when you start recording, so I'm gonna cancel out of here. So when you start recording, what's happening is it's recording all the tracks, all 6 tracks, right? So depending on how you have that set up, so if you look very closely, I have for apps, I have it at track 6. Okay, for game, I have it at track 5. For mic, I have 3, which is the mic track. For music, I have track 2, the music bed. Okay, and I have the voiceover IP as track 4. So let's say I was doing a local recording. The person said, hey, I want to record a podcast with you, but I do not want it to be live. Okay, so you can actually have all these things selected in such a way where when you import it into like a Davinci Resolve application, it will show you all the tracks separate. So if you see voice over IP is track 4, my music bed is track 2, the mic is track 3. Now, I intentionally selected those because I wanted the music bed first, and I wanted my mic to be either 3 or 4, and the second mic to be right after that. So you have music bed at 2, my mic at 3, and the voice over IP, which is another mic, which is, you know, whoever I'm speaking to, which is track 4. So how does that translate, right? So now you're recording, so you record the conversations, you know, 20, 25 minutes or whatever it is. You know, you want to make sure that your levels are good. So you want to make sure it's in the yellow as you're recording that conversation. The music bed, you want to make sure that's lower than the actual voices coming in with your mic and your voice over IP. Now, once you're done with that recording, then when you select it, because it's going to be an MP4, when you select it and you import it into like a Davinci Resolve, which is a free application, by the way, you're going to find 6 tracks when you import it, right? So you have 1 through 6, and you can remove the track that has the music and just keep the 2 tracks for you and the individual. If it was royalty-free music, you decide to keep that. You can, you know, modify that in terms of the levels. So that's the other way that you can do it when you are recording locally. And I know that with potential DMCA strikes or bans, you know, from live streaming applications, one of the things that you definitely want to make sure that you're doing is recording your content with either royalty-free music, muting the content, right? And or removing that track from that particular live stream, right? So you don't want to have any issues or challenges, because the last thing that you want is for your channel to be completely shut down because you had copyrighted music from a year or 2 ago or something like that, where you thought it was okay because it was a clip and, you know, you had a great moment and you had copyrighted music on there, and they decided, you know what, you're gonna have to find a way to either remove that or suffer the consequences. And the last thing that you want to do is suffer the consequences. So one of the things that so before we I want to make sure that I have everything, so I want to do a quick recap. So I did a quick overview of installing Voicemeeter Banana. I definitely say if you decide to install Voicemeeter Banana, make sure you open up the file application, the location, go to properties, compatibility, and you run it in administrator mode. I think that's important. Another thing I definitely say, as by way of a tip, is make sure that after you set up the entire Voicemeeter Banana, you want to go to menu and you want to save your settings. So in the event that it wipes, you can load those settings, right? If you decide to run the VST hosts, then you can patch those things, which are these things lined up on the bottom, which I have a video for as well. When you're in OBS, you want to make sure that these tracks coming in are separate, right? So you can easily mute them during a stream, especially if you're playing copyrighted music. If you are using just the streaming application, or you're just streaming in OBS, you want to go to the advanced audio properties, and whatever your music track is, you can uncheck this box, the first box, number 1, because in streaming it only records track 1. So you want to uncheck this box for the music section so that music doesn't hit your stream. Okay. And when you are doing local recordings, and the way to set that up, just doing a recap here, you want to go to the output, recording, and advanced mode, select all these tracks and make sure it's an MP4. Okay. And then from there, you'll be able to do a local recording and make sure that that audio, which can potentially be a copyright, if you're sure, not sure, it doesn't matter. Be sure by not having it in your live stream, right? So for stream settings, currently, let me see what I have running here. For stream settings, just want to show you my settings real quick. 5800 for me is where 1080p starts. So I'm running a VBR at 5800 and I'm capping it at 5990. I think that's a good balance. Just wanted to share that with you if you're wondering what my streaming setup is for going live. These are my current bit rates that I currently use right now. I know they say constant bit rate. I'm saying that I know they say constant bit rate for most things. I think 5800 to 5990 is not that big of a gap. And I think that because the bit rate speeds fluctuate anyway when you're live, I think this is fairly workable, which is why I'm using this particular setup. So just wanted to mention that. And I think that's it. One of the things I definitely wanted to cover in this video is to make sure that you have the baseline to consider separating your audio as you're doing your live streams, as well as you're recording your local tracks, and also did a quick overview for Voicemeeter Banana. All right, so I'll link some videos in the description below, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.